I can't believe it. This is the second time Dums beat me on a topic. I'm getting old. So, once again, we've gathered here to talk about something that didn't land that well, and it comes from League of Legends. One would say these days it is happening a bit too often. But unlike the infamous change with the Hextech chests, the one Riot pulled off now was actually made with really good intentions. It's just really complex problems, and so the solutions are really complex too. And of course, we are talking about the one and only lane swap situation. Now, funnily enough, there is a good chance a lot of people playing League of Legends will have no idea what this is. And that is simply because lane swaps are almost exclusively done in pro play. The premise is simple. Let's say you are playing your lane and suddenly you are doing really well. You can either try to dominate your lane, or you can take your advantage, march into another lane and destroy it too. But what if you're not doing well? What if the enemy is pushing you back? Well, in that case, you can lane swap and get advantage in the other lane still. See, lane swapping is all about making sure that your team has more members in the enemy lane than the enemy. If you break it all down to the simplest concept, that is what it is. But the problem is, the enemy team can also lane swap, countering your own lane swap, making the lane just a lane. However, you will not know that this is happening until the enemy is already in the lane, but you can try to predict that, which would be just random. But worst of all, when a lane swap happens, it just sucks. It is an effective strategy that everyone hates. That's because it breaks the lane that is being lane swapped, and it also breaks the other lane that you are lane swapping against. Basically, the other side on both lanes has nothing to do, because it is usually a top laner who is now facing an AD carry and a support, so the only thing they can do is sit under their tower. And let me tell you, when this happens in pro play, nobody is happy because this is boring to watch. And the funniest part about all of this is that even in pro play, which is where all of this happens the most, people don't like it either. The pros themselves hate it when it happens, and they themselves hate using this strategy. And so, with the last few PvEs, we've seen a new anti-swapping detection mechanic. And Riot Frogzone gave us all the details. Now keep in mind that the specific numbers of the system just keep changing all the time, because this system really needs some tuning. But as of the day of this written post, League got a new mechanic which is simply called lane swap detection. And it triggers when two enemy champions enter the area around the wrong lane without a jungling item. This can trigger between 1 minute 30 and 3 minutes 30 for top lane, and 1:30 to 2:15 for mid lane. This is simply because everyone can roam into the mid lane, and so early on it is more likely that something is gonna be happening around there. Now, if a team has no junglers, meaning there are no jungling items used, this system is just gone, which prevents the new players from just marching into whatever lane they can, because who cares about rules there? But also, Riot thought about people trying to game the system. And so if people buy more than one jungling items on a team, all junglers on that team will be accounted for that detection. Now, when this detection is triggered, the defending turret will have 95% damage reduction, meaning that it is pretty much impossible for the swapping team to destroy that turret. The defending turret will also one-shot minions, meaning that even if you swap into this lane trying to dive the enemy, you only have like 3 seconds to do so before the enemy minions die. But also, when it's triggered, minions only give XP and gold to the closest champion. This simply prevents people from just hovering around, because you are effectively nullifying all the XP that you would get. And on top of that, just to make sure you really don't do that, minions simply give 50% less gold and XP. Now, after the detection, all of these effects are up for 25 seconds in top lane, but only 6 seconds for mid lane. Because again, the chances are people will go through mid lane whenever they are going anywhere. With that said, even when it's only 6 seconds, there is enough time for the mid laner to just lose all the XP from a wave if it's unfortunate. All you need is just bad timing and you are at a big disadvantage. But also, because top lane is already a really miserable experience, just to make sure they really don't get any lane swaps, the defending turret also one-shots champions, and the defending champion gets 50% reduced damage taken under their own turret. So when it comes to killing the idea of swapping lanes, I think Riot kinda succeeded there. But as you'll see, the problem is somewhere else. Now, together with this, Frogzone also mentioned something really important. These changes are temporary and by extension heavy-handed by necessity. We intend to work on long-term solutions, similar to how we address funnel, double support items, and so on. But an elegant solution that solves the problem without adding excess long-term rules to the game will take time, and we'll keep these rules in-game until that solution is ready. See, this is something that a lot of people missed. The solution that is in the game right now is only temporary. It is not supposed to be a permanent thing that is in the game. So yes, it sucks, but there is a big reason why Riot is even doing this. Partially it is because from the engineering side, this is surprisingly a really complex problem. You have a strategy that is just really good, it sucks for absolutely everyone, but it is not related to any kind of number balancing or using items or anything that you can actually tune. This is a fundamental rule-breaking strategy. And enforcing something against this would mean you have to restructure the entire game. But alas, Riot is still working on this, and so last week we got an update. We are preparing a micropatch for lane swap mitigation to live servers to best solve for pro, without impacting regular play after observing where and when it's being triggered based off of games yesterday and today. We see this impacting 5% of games, but we think we can get it quite a bit lower with the adjustments going into the micropatch. Now, first of all, 5% of games is not that much until you realize that it's what, like once every 20 games? That is actually surprisingly a lot. And so it's cool to see that Riot is looking at how and where this system is being detected and how they can get rid of it. And so first they looked into just reducing the times, so it went down by 30 seconds in the top lane and 50 seconds for mid lane, but then they also looked into the locations. Due to localization, which is just translating the game, we weren't able to get a differentiation between warning lane swap detected and lane swap detected you're punished for 15.5. You are only punished if you have the debuff. The first time the warning pops up, there is actually no penalty applied. And this warning range is applied quite liberally to give players warnings that something will happen soon. We will get a differentiation on "hey, please leave the area", and this is being applied for 15.6. We are still working on a long-term fix for this, and feel we have some promising directions. No confirmed ship date yet though. So, the funny thing is that when this system first launched, there were a lot of people who were getting these messages, and they immediately thought, hey, I'm just being punished for no reason. The problem is, as Frogzone mentioned, there were no differences between the game telling you, hey, just please leave, and hey, you're screwed. And so, that was quickly fleshed out. And thankfully, he once again mentioned that this is just temporary. Something better is in the works, and honestly, I wonder how it's gonna work, because this is not an easy thing to fix. I mean, again, remember, this is mostly aimed at pro plays. And that is because these days there are more people who like to watch League rather than play it. Or at the very least, those numbers are really neck to neck. Because the chances are everyone tried to play League, but not that many stuck around. And so it is Riot's priority to make the watching experience better for everyone. And so we got some more information on this entire situation from Freak, who released a whole video where he talks about this topic. Or at least it is part of his patch summaries. And here we learned some cool things. For example, technically Riot had a lot of ways that they could just remove lane swapping. But in the majority of those solutions, it would just make the game suck for a lot of people. Especially top laners, and we all know that top laners are already not having the best time. So for example, they considered increasing the fortification of turrets even more. This would make it so that when the enemy is swapping into your lane, they would have a really hard time getting your turret down. But at the same time, if it is just a fair 1v1 in the top lane, well, no one would be able to take down a turret. Also, Freak mentioned that right now is the best time to deal with this issue because the worlds are over and so there is a bit more time to deal with it. And apparently, right now, pro play is in such a state that if they don't do anything about lane swapping, it will just happen every game. And remember, this technically comes directly from Riot. It's not like people made it up. It is simply that powerful to push your advantage forward, or even to catch up if you're behind. And so, when all of these changes were announced, and when people started playing with it, did they like it? Not really! And that's because, in most cases, lane swapping only ever happens in pro play. You don't really see it in regular play because you need quite a bit of communication. And League really doesn't like that. But also, people don't like the new detection system because players can abuse it. The new lane swap mechanic is awful. Just played one game and it was enough to see how this doesn't make sense for solo queue. I played mid lane, my bot lane gets prio while the enemy team is resetting and roaming mid. Enemy mid lane dies level 3, I took most of the cannon wave without them being in the XP range, got less gold for the minions and XP, enemy mid lane TPs back and gets 2 melee and 2 casters of that wave in XP, only farmed 1 caster and 1 melee, equals my gold, and even though I farmed the entire cannon wave, gets half a level of XP lead on me, even though I didn't lose a single minion from a cannon wave or the next wave. All this while getting a yellow text spamming on my screen the whole time. Apparently, there were quite a few of such situations. I just played a game of League where my support was toxic since champion select. They proceeded to run my mid during the first 4 waves and sat in the long river bush to abuse the new lane swap mechanic. While the enemy mid laner was level 3, I was barely halfway towards level 1. Is this happening to anyone else? So yes, this is one of the examples where people are just abusing this system, which again, League is not really that great at dealing with abusers. But the biggest problem is that people are just accidentally triggering the system. We got an example where there was a 3-way invade into the enemy jungle, where they were met by 3 members of the other team, but because of how the detection works with the radius, it only triggered for one side. Obviously, this is not intended, but it doesn't matter, it is still kinda ruining games. And it is all rooted in how this problem works. As far as I know, and this is from just reverse engineering the engine, Riot is using one spherical collider that is put into the apex of each lane. When a champion overlaps that sphere, it counts up an index. That is unless you have a jungling item, and that is unless there is only one jungling item on your team. Anyway, when that index reaches 3, or for all the engineers 2, it sends a message to all the overlapping champions that they are about to get punished. Then there is a short delay before they actually get punished. The problem is, the spherical collider is massive. Because it is a sphere calculating distance from the apex of the lane, it reaches quite far into the jungle. Which means you can't really do anything in the enemy jungle early on. You can't really team up to set up objectives. You can't really team up to invade the enemy. You're just chained to your lane and you are afraid to not get too far away from it. Which is funny because for a season where early aggression was a really big deal, this is working against it. But again, remember, this is only temporary. And I feel like when they finally rework the system, the detection should be at least along the lane, not just one sphere in the middle. But who knows, maybe they have another way to fix it. I mean, they could also try and make it only work in pro play, but the issue there is that pro players would not really be able to train with this in mind. There would be some really awkward situations which did not happen in their practice games. But finally, all of this also runs into another obstacle. Regardless of what the real solution is gonna be, they have to account for the fact that in the past, Riot designed some things with champions roaming in mind. For example, let's have a look at Bard. Bard is a champion that I have mained for quite a few years. There was even a time where I was a Bard one-trick. And Bard's theme is simply all about wandering around. It is literally in his title. His gates are all about roaming. You put down heals so that when you leave the lane, your AD carry can heal on their own. And by leaving your lane to collect the meeps, you are getting XP, which you would lose in the lane. So in short, Bard's entire design is all about triggering those detection systems. So right now, Bard is not having a great time. And that is where the whole lane swap situation is. It is a work-in-progress system that is currently hurting some regular plays. I say that, but again, 5% of all games is not that low. And so after a season of getting first blood and just going for each other's throats, it is funny that now we're just going all against it. Because these first bloods are kinda delving into the pro play territory. Even though, let's be honest, these two issues are totally different things. But that makes me think, if we get a design that is really good in one situation, but it really makes some other things suck, will Riot do this more often? Will there be more things that will be reversed if they don't really work? Please be the gacha.